Okay, being 3 o'clock, we will call to order the Marathon County Extension Education and Economics Development Committee. Number 2, Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Number 3 is public comment. We do have 3 for public comment. The first one would be Kelly Borkert.
Hi, everybody. How is this?
Yep, Kelly, can you state your name and address, please?
Yes, I'm Kelly Borchard, the Executive Director of Child Caring, which is located at 850 Highway 153 in Mosinee, Wisconsin.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so wanted to talk today about the child care situation here in Marathon County, and it's been a couple of years since I've been here to talk a little bit about what that situation looks like as far as we're concerned here at Child Caring, which in your packet of information, I've shared some of the statistics that we're currently looking at around child care here, and the agency I work for is a child care resource and referral agency, and so our job here in the community is to support quality early care and education by providing resource and referral services to families, child care providers, and communities. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about our services, and there are a couple other people here today that want to talk a little bit about child care, but I'll briefly give you some of the data and statistics as to what we're looking at here. Just note that child care resource and referrals like Child Caring have been around 30 plus years. So we've been serving the Marathon County area for a number of years working on child care issues. One of the major concerns for families, young families who have children, would be the cost of child care. And so if you look like on page 3, this gives you a chart of how much child care costs for families, right? So families in Marathon County can expect to pay anywhere between $125 and as much as $350 a week for full-time child care. Okay, so that ranges from family child care providers who offer child care in their homes to group child care centers, such as Owasso Child Care or the YMCA. And we like to point out that most families in the area will pay 3 times the amount of what is considered affordable by the federal government. So you'll see those figures there. So often child care is one of the highest expenses. Anybody here who's had to pay for child care knows that it's one of your highest expenses in any monthly budget. So that's what we've got for the cost of care in the area. If you go to the next slide, this one is really very telling about the availability of child care in Marathon County. And so what we've been experiencing over the past decade or so is a significant decline in the numbers of regulated child care providers. So this goes back to 2012 and tells you that at one point we had 199. I can also tell you that in 2010 we had about 244 child care providers. So in the past decade we've lost a significant amount of regulated care. We also know that some of our work with a grant that we're working on here in Marathon County called Dream Up, that about 50% of the zip codes in Marathon County are considered deserts where there is little or no access to quality child care. I'll let you know also that the 83 programs currently in Marathon County, we're also going to lose another child care provider in the Stratford area who's closing up here within the next couple of weeks, and that'll be an additional loss of 37 providers. And they told us that it's because they've lost staff, more staff than they can find, and so they have to close after being open they opened early in 2021. Next slide gives you a breakdown of those 83 childcare programs that are currently, or soon to be 82 in Marathon County. So you can see we have 25 group childcare centers here currently, and we really need hundreds of childcare staff to work at these childcare programs. The workforce situation, though, is at a crisis level. If you haven't heard this already, we know that the current workforce retention in childcare also impacts the workforce of other industries and other businesses. Going on to page 6 under the childcare issues, I mean, these are the issues that we're currently facing here. So we have a shortage of workers in childcare because of the low wages that people in childcare make, anywhere from about $10 to $12 an hour with very little or no benefits. There really is a true lack of value and respect for those people who care for our youngest children. There's a lot of burnout because of the low pay and the hard work, and people just don't stick around very much, so there's a lack of longevity in childcare staffing. We know that right now, childcare providers are receiving some temporary COVID assistance called Child Care Counts. And at the end of 2023 or so, that funding will end, and it's currently supporting hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for childcare programs within their monthly budgets. And that is soon to end with some of those COVID relief dollars. And we're very, very concerned about what happens as a result of that. And we also know, just based on those numbers of providers that we've lost over the last decade, that there's a lack of availability. So there's lack of staff, which means there are childcare classrooms that are closed at centers. Sometimes wait lists are as much as a year or even longer. We had one provider tell us recently that they don't expect to ever have openings. That's pretty scary. And then the family childcare providers who do care out of their home continue to turn over quite rapidly. I also included a couple, I'm trying to making sure we stay within our 15 minutes, but also included a couple of handouts at the very end of this packet that give you some, broad overviews of why childcare is so important and how it affects other businesses and the economy, and why we should all be investing, invest quality, in quality and childcare in general. So I'm going to turn it over right now to Elsa, who's going to come on up. Is that okay to just bring her up?
Is it possible
Yeah.
to ask a question?
Oh,
I think we can do that during the actual item.
Okay.
discussion.
Stick around.
We can. Okay, we had this
Okay,
discussion.
yep, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much.
Next, we have Elsa Duranzo. Can you state your name and address, please?
My name is Elsa Duranzo. It's 421 Witter Street in Wisconsin Rapids.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm here on behalf of myself and also our private and public industries. So I work in workforce development and economic development, and with my organization, have been hosting employer roundtables throughout the Marathon County area. In that time, we have really honed in on one of the reasons why our industry leaders are experiencing labor shortages is that their workers cannot find affordable and quality healthcare, or not healthcare, childcare. So increases of people calling in sick to work or calling in general, or the inability to attract talent. During some of these conversations, I had listened to or witnessed people expressing that they are ready to take their industry somewhere else, particularly Canada, because they aren't experiencing this issue that we are here in Marathon County. So these industry leaders are having to respond to their crisis in creative ways by flexible staffing. They've had to increase their paid time off and increase their wages, which subsequently leads to one parent staying home to take care of the kids, making the labor shortage worse. They're unable to recruit talent. One in particular, GreenHeck, has said that they have been having issues finding talented engineers to come into Wausau, not only because of the child care crisis, but also the housing crisis. I also had the opportunity of listening to testimony about our specialized healthcare practitioners, particularly the cardiology department is having difficulty bringing in people because the families and the doctors can't find the childcare here. So that part of the industry and the staffing is kind of where I'm. Sorry, I'm really nervous. But I'm going to give it off to Melissa Holtz. So she is a provider in our area who is experiencing the staffing crisis within her within her business, not because of housing or because of childcare itself, but because of the wages and the lack of benefits. So.
Thank you. Next, excuse me. Next, we have Melissa. Can you state your name and address, please?
My name is Melissa Holtz. Address is 604 15th Street, Mosinee, Wisconsin.
Thank you.
I am here as owner and operator of Storybook Kids in Mosinee. And you might say, like, what's the ask? We're asking for advocacy. I have a quality childcare center I've had in Mosinee for 14 years, and actually we are the only group center in the Mosinee area. I've got a waiting list that's out about 2 years. Up until recently, I've got some college girls home from school that have come back to assist just in the day-to-day operations so we can function. Other than that, we're operating a center with 9 staff right now. So we can I typically enroll about 130 kids. Our capacity is 94 at a time. Right now, I'm at about 76 because I just don't have the staffing, and that includes myself and our director in a classroom full-time. So we just need to we need to start attracting these people back to the industry. But with the wages that we can offer, average wage between my teacher and my assistants, which is actually pretty high for our industry, is $13.46 an hour. And because of the grants we've been able to get through the just all the different things that the county is running, we have been able to offer some bonuses just to attract some of these girls. But we want to attract them, we want them to stay. And ultimately, our youngest learners, they're our pride and joy, and we need to start them early, and we need a safe place for them to go. And we all watch the news. We don't have that right now here in this community, and we need to bring it back. So we're just looking at whether it's business partnerships, anything we can do in Marathon County to partner up to make our child care centers great again. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Number 4, approve the Extension Education Economics Development Committee meeting minutes. Do we have a motion? Motion by Supervisor Rosenberg, second by Supervisor Niemeyer. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. 4A, discussion on county roles in child care and affordable housing. Okay, yep.
All right, Mr. Chair and committee members, really I'll try to be relatively brief. I think everyone that you've heard from did a very nice job speaking to kind of the current state that has led to the county, I think rightfully, you as policymakers considering what your role is, if anything, what the role of county government is in addressing this challenge. And I'll just tee off what Kelly and Elsa talked about. The county we have received the grant from the State of Wisconsin Department of Children and Families, the Dream Up grant, and actually Elsa and Kelly have been on that team of about 20 people. 20 entities have representatives on this working group under this grant to really do just that, try to find a come up with a strategic plan to increase the availability of quality childcare within our community. And in fact, that group has been meeting. We started with, what is that result we want to work toward? And it might sound simple, like, well, we want more childcare, right? But it actually turned out to be a lot longer of a conversation about what that really looks like for the group. And we came to this consensus point about the result being that all working families in Marathon County have accessible, affordable, quality child care in their community. There are a lot of reasons that we went around just to bring you up to speed on where we are in terms of this grant work. But it gets to the ideas that certainly Elsa talked about. You look at staffing, the impact on economic development, which this committee is certainly, it's within your purview to consider the county role of economic development. You look at the staffing impact on other local businesses. We do have people that are making difficult choices, and I think I've talked about this at this committee before. We have staff here that have I have staff that have come to me and talked about how we're in a good spot. We employ both the husband and wife, and we're looking at it. They were having childcare issues. Is one of them going to have to move on from their work here and because they couldn't find access to childcare for a long period of time, and there's a long wait. So we look at it from this staffing impact on local businesses, what that means in terms of economic development, the inability of other businesses to grow. It's Greenheck's a great example, as is when you look at us as an employer. We're within about a couple hundred feet of the Marathon County Jail. Our staffing needs at the jail don't operate from 8 to 5. One of the things we talked about is, working families have different needs. And they solve those needs in different ways, and we need to make sure that if individuals, this group thought it was important that if individuals wanted to work, there shouldn't be a barrier in terms of access to affordable childcare for them to make that choice. So that was kind of the result that we focused on in terms of our strategic planning effort. And Kelly did a great job of going through, and I think I can show you, there's the result. When we look at indicators, how would we know if we're making an impact, right? The number of regulated child care providers in Marathon County, and we tried to look at data sources that already exist, I think you all know. Take a good data measure that already exists as opposed to expending a whole ton of time, energy, and effort trying to create a measure that's a little bit better. And these are the measures that we thought not only exist now, but kind of put us on the path of where we would know if we're making an impact. So the first, again, is the number of child care providers, because you might have a provider, a large-scale provider that, a large child care center, you think of the YMCA or Wausau Child Care. But you also have a lot of smaller providers, particularly outside the major metro area. We have centers, as you heard, in Mosinee that provide a lot of spots, but there's a lot of smaller providers, 3 to 5 children. Those are vital to our success. So the second then is the total number of slots, because you might have the number of childcare providers might remain stagnant, but your slots might actually go down if you have if a couple larger centers close. So those were some of the measures, and this is just a graphical representation of what Kelly showed you going back to 2010, and you'll see a pretty substantive drop in the number of regulated child care providers in Marathon County. And we had a long conversation about, what is the impact of regulation, and that's not something that, other than through advocacy, as was referenced, that the county really has a role in terms of changing regulation, but we had a lot of conversation around the importance of regulation because, as was referenced, quality childcare, individuals that know both the science of education, but also of providing that safe care for children is important. The other piece here is, what would success look like? And again, just a graphical representation of us turning the curve, hoping to increase the number of regulated providers, and that's a lot of what Elsa's been doing. She's been engaging through workforce development with people looking to get into this line of work. Open a center, something as simple as, there's grants available for fencing, because you need to have a fence around the area where children are going to be playing outside, and other things that people are going to need helping with them with business planning. All those things, not only grants available at the state level, but the technical assistance as well. Here's the baseline on the total capacity, or the spots, and you'll see that those two have declined pretty precipitously, but certainly the need hasn't. So again, similar thing, we wanting to turn that curve, start moving that the other direction. And one thing that I thought it's really opened my eyes, my children are older, 9 and 12. I remember it being a challenge, but I didn't have a 2-year wait for childcare. We had a couple childcare providers that we got to pick from. So when you talk about a 2-year wait, what that means to people, when the wait period exceeds the gestational period, you have just a logistical problem on your hands. But it does force those individuals to look at, how does it impact their decision whether or not to return to the workforce? And as we've talked about at the county board, certainly as an employer, Marathon County has challenges with regard to retention and recruiting, but so does the overall community. So it's, again, potentially one of those areas, subject, of course, to the policymakers. You guys decide what the role is, but it is perhaps one of those levers we can pull either as our own entity, our own organization to address our own challenges, or as part of the community attempt. So here is kind of where we are right now, and we in fact have a meeting tomorrow. Our Dream Up group is meeting tomorrow to really finalize what this strategy, this plan of action looks like in terms of our proposed budget for the $75,000 that Marathon County and all these other entities received. We were the lead grant applicant for that Dream Up program. But you'll see we have the triangle in the middle. It's kind of the center of this. Access, quality, and affordability really need to address all those things. And as was referenced, there's just right now a real challenge with regard to staffing. We have had a lot, as Kelly referenced, even more centers closing, with the other available opportunities in terms of employment. When you start talking about wages in that $13 to $15 an hour range, and then you add on the fact that there's no benefits, there's a lot of other opportunities in the current labor market for people. And these individuals have a skill set that is highly desirable. Early childhood education, a lot of them go to work for schools. Schools need people as well. And as you know, school districts have benefit structures in place that certainly exceed the benefits that generally don't exist in a lot of these centers. Some have them, but a great many do not. So you'll see some of the strategies around the outside, and a lot of them are, really investing in workforce. We have representatives from the local high schools. We have representatives from NTC. UWSP Wausau has been attending some of these meetings to really find out how do we have the pipeline to address the worker shortage within early childhood education, finding ways to increase wages and benefits. We've had a couple of discussions on that. It's really challenging, but there is money currently through the state. This isn't, there's money available, but it's not county money at this point. There's not been an investment of any county funds. Again, that's a decision ultimately for the county board, and this committee is the committee of jurisdiction to start those conversations. We spent a lot of time talking about leveraging public and private funding partnerships. We've examined some innovative partnerships that we've seen pop up in the area. There's one in Anago that has been of interest to us, but this is my characterization. So the movement on those partnerships is slower than you might otherwise expect. Certainly slower than what I would, because I won't pick on a company, but if you were a large company, my sense is you get a larger bang for your buck in terms of investment, not to create an on-site childcare, but to give a childcare stipend to the people that have children for them to get the childcare they want. First of all, it's something that it's a tangible benefit I can see, feel, and spend. It also allows me to pick something else than what is available. So those have been more of a challenge. Again, this is my characterization, but I think everyone in our group recognizes we need to partner together. I shouldn't say we, people, entities need to partner together. This has got to be a broader solution than just expect the childcare providers to find it. We spent a fair amount of time talking about alternative childcare business models. As I said, having the childcare provider located on site. I'll tell you, I had a conversation earlier. I serve on the North Central Healthcare Executive Committee, as does Chair Gibbs. We both serve on the North Central Healthcare Board. They are having a significant struggle to retain and attract CNAs and other paraprofessional positions. And based on what they're hearing from their staff, childcare is a significant barrier for those individuals. And we're hearing that anecdotally. We have representation on our group from the Wausau Chamber of Commerce. I mean, everyone is saying that. I think we have some opportunity in terms of data gathering to get some more, put some more numbers to that, to what we're hearing. But those are the strategies and overall goal that we have. There is certainly going to need to be an influx of funds, whether that comes from the federal and state government. Some of those funds already are out there. But our $75,000 that we do have also can fill some of that need. So right now we're working to finalize that budget. I will certainly keep you guys informed as to what that grant we feel it can be used for. But I want to make very clear, and I think everyone knows this, the grant isn't going to solve the problem. It was referenced before. Childcare is one of those things that is impacting the economy, the local economy, the state economy, certainly the national economy as well, in terms of worker shortage. And I know Chair Gibbs and Deputy Administrator Holman have arranged for Dale Knapp from the Wisconsin Counties Association, as well as Dave Ekman from our local Chamber of Commerce, to come to the February full meeting of the county board to talk about worker shortage. I have no doubt they'll probably talk a little bit about childcare, a little bit about housing, and then that's at your educational meeting. At your voting meeting, Chair Gibbs has also arranged for an educational presentation from North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning. Some time ago, the county provided funding, the board approved funding for a housing study. And that regional housing study was done by North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning, so they'll give the full board an overview of what that housing study found as well. All of those things come together to, I think we're all feeling it, right? It's a challenging labor market. And, as the person you vest with leading an organization of 750 people, I certainly feel that from our organization. And I think we can talk about, and I know this group has talked about, is there a specific strategy we adopt as an employer? And then how does that compare, if at all, to the strategy the board elects to take or doesn't elect to take with respect to the community? There's a lot of decisions, policy decisions for the board, and there's a lot of complex information. But really, if anybody has anything else to share, the work is ongoing. I'd love to show up with hey, look, we have this plan and it's going to work. The reality is, if there was some silver bullet to address this issue, we would rip off that idea as quickly as anybody else could share it. But there's a lot of people trying a lot of things, but it's going to be a multifaceted approach.
Thank you, Administrator Leonard. Do we have any questions for Lance? Yep.
Thanks for the presentation, Mr. Administrator. Question, do you have representative from the state on this committee, and is there anybody on that committee trying to, I guess, lobby, I don't know if that's the right word, but to get that funding and that commitment from the state level?
We have, I don't know that I would say they're on our committee, but we have a lot of interactions with WICA, and I'm not going to remember the acronym. It's a whole lot of acronyms when you're involved with government, but the state of Wisconsin is doing a fair number of things, and they're trying to get all of the cohort of this Dream Up grant. We're one of a number of people that have, number of entities, I should say, that receive this, a number of local government or collaborative entities that receive the Dream Up grant. Those are coordinated through the state, through the Department of Children and Families, and their consultant was Children's First Finance. Did I get that right? First Children's Finance. I always get it backwards. So there's information sharing, and in fact, we just had a virtual meeting with someone from the state, myself, and representatives of the health department that are leading us through this process. The question really is, again, what is the role of each level of government? The state has invested, in my mind, they've invested significantly. A lot of the work that, Elsa, your work is funded through the state, right? Through.
Yes, but it's not specifically for childcare. Mine is workforce or worker advancement initiative. I'm specifically making.
Sorry, you shouldn't.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you. I'm specifically helping to increase the worker or address the labor shortage and childcare. In my as I was in the investigative portion of my work, I identified as childcare being, or the lack of childcare being, one of the main issues in our labor shortage. So, but to answer your question, we do have somebody from the state. Her name is Rebecca Burdick. She's with DCF of the Northern Bureau. And the state investment, what the real crisis is that the state investment ends in 2024. And so the child care counts that was brought up earlier, that is a stabilization program, mostly for our providers to be able to pay their workers enough money to just keep coming to work. It is not, it's a Band-Aid at best. And we don't know what the state's going to do. And yes, WICA is, they have Raising Wisconsin, which is their main point into lobbying for the interests of the industry.
Hope that answered the question. I should say, I hope Elsa answered the question.
Any other questions? Supervisor,
Yeah, you said that Canada doesn't have the same experience. Why not?
That is a great question. I don't know. So this all came up during one of our employer roundtables. It was a really wonderful group of people. I apologize, I'm not at liberty to say which company it was. It's one major one located in Mosinee, who is just really frustrated with the inability to attract and retain. He had mentioned that they increased their wages. A lot of it has to do with transportation, but that's just, I believe that they already have a plant in Canada and are not experiencing the issues that they are experiencing here, and are like at their wits' end, and they're like, you know what, we're ready to close up shop. And I was like, please don't. give us a little bit of time. And but yeah, that was just a testimony from the CEO.
It'd be interesting to find out why.
Right.
The
Yes,
solution to our
yes,
problem may
solution.
be in part with what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't even speculate why.
The other thing is, this information is regulated childcare, and there's got to be a lot of unregulated childcare. There's got to be a lot of grandparents or relatives that are doing things that they'll take care of their grandkids, but they don't want to be doing it to the level they're doing it. What do we know about unregulated childcare?
Thank you. That's a really good question because yes, there are people who do childcare, who offer care, who are not regulated. So there's a level of people that do childcare that's they legally operate, right, with 3 or fewer kids that they care for. And then there's another sector of people that do childcare unregulated that might be illegal. So when someone's caring for kids more than 4 at one time who are not related to them, it's considered illegal childcare. So there's 2 different, types of populations. And certainly we all know these people, right? Like they're our neighbors, our friends, our family. We know people who care for kids. It's just that we don't have accurate counts of who those people are necessarily. Is that sort of what you mean? Like what's the data look like on those folks?
Yeah, kind of. And then what does a person do who's taking care of 3 kids and
Right?
the
Like
neighbor lady or
yeah.
some friend is desperate?
Yep. So we know there's sort of informal caregivers who take in a couple kids, which is perfectly legal and fine. Do we know for sure that they have had CPR and have had background checks and, those other sort of basic health and safety guidelines that people who are following who are regulated? That's, I think, where the question comes in, right? Like, is it safe and reliable and, quality care? That's what we're not sure about, right?
And are they available for our tax child care credits and all those available on those people that aren't regulated?
So I believe that you could still do some tax credits as an individual paying for care as long as you had someone's sort of social security number. But what somebody wouldn't be eligible for if they were not regulated would be taking in Wisconsin Shares, the subsidy program that helps low-income families pay for care. They wouldn't be eligible for like the child care food program, which helps reimburse for meals. There was one other thought I had. They wouldn't be eligible for this child care counts funding, the stabilization grants. So there's a lot more opportunity for people who have gone through those few basic health and safety steps.
If I can add, that's one of the big conversations we had, right? We have access to the data we have access to. And a lot of Elsa's work and one of the strategies that was on that slide with the triangle and all the notes around it, we want to help people that aren't regulated take the steps to get regulated so they can have access to all the things that Kelly talked about. That's one big strategy because, first of all, that enhances quality. We also recognize that there are people that aren't going to take their child to a formal child care center for the reasons you just referenced. They have relatives, perhaps grandparents, or parents work split shifts. They have a different solution. That's why our results, we spent more time than you'd think probably talking about what the result was we were really going for. And that was, in my mind, all working families have access to affordable, accessible, affordable, quality childcare in their community. That doesn't mean the same thing for everybody. If you want to have, if you have relatives able to provide childcare that in your mind, in your assessment, they check all the boxes you need in terms of affordability and in terms of quality, great. Or if you have an informal childcare provider that isn't regulated and you're comfortable with that, that's an individual parent decision. Government doesn't get involved in that. However, if I'm a parent and I am putting my child in a place where, geez, it's either not affordable or it's not of the quality I would otherwise want, but it's the only access I have, our thought process was that doesn't meet our result. That's not what we're shooting for. We're shooting for where people they have at least access to the level of care, quality of care, affordability of care that is best for them. That's going to be different things for different people. I mean, if you look at a large child care center, some of the for-profit child care centers, they're exceedingly expensive. I mean, you pay more for child care, early childhood care than you do for a child in college, and not the local, not UW. Stevens Point Wausau is a great deal. This is not that deal. So that was, again, we spent a lot of time on the result for a lot of those reasons you just referenced. It's a complex issue.
But my thought is that there are kids out there, and they're somewhere. I mean, they're not at home with a bottle of gin like in the Industrial Revolution.
Well, they might be. You don't know.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, we had that conversation as well, right? People, the fact that is a significant shortage of childcare spots, and there is. I can't remember the number off the top of my head. Kelly might know. The total number of the deficit in terms of spots or slots we have in terms of childcare within the county, it's a large number. But to your point, they are somewhere. I don't think our strategy is like, oh my gosh, we need to add 800 spots right away. We want to turn that curve, make sure we're continuing to not lose. And in my mind, I'd love to get to a place, and I said this in the group, I'd love to get to a place where we were able to use the wait time to get in as a good measure, because wait time shows, if enough people have the ability to kind of flow in and out of that market, your wait time should be significantly less. And I make the choice then. If I'm with one child care provider or my children are with a relative and I want to get into the child care market, a 2-year wait is not reasonable. But, 60, 90 days, I can plan for that. But we're not anywhere near 60 or 90 days. It's kind of like the housing market, which you'll hear Dale Knapp and Dave Ekman talk about with the worker shortage, and certainly Sam Wessel from regional planning will talk about it. I mean, you look at trying to find a rental unit right now, there's not a whole lot of supply, and it's really expensive. So when there's not enough supply, what that makes very difficult is the movement of people. You should have a healthy vacancy rate. Right now, we don't have a healthy vacancy rate.
We don't have a vacancy
We
rate.
don't have a vacancy rate, right?
Can I add also, so unregulated childcare, and I'm just gonna, this was something that was shared with us at one of our Dream Up meetings from the representative of the Wausau School District. So during the first week of school, she had to lose one of her administrative people because this person needed childcare and had to go to unregulated childcare and found somebody on Facebook. Took them to this place. It seemed okay at first, but then on the second day when she went to pick up the child, there were 3 children in car seats that were under the age of 2, and just thought that there were too many children and that this was an unsafe environment, and took their child out and had to quit. So unregulated childcare is not the answer. Plus, if you're trying to attract people into Wausau, those people don't have friends, they don't have family, they don't have that type of access. It will always be there, and it works for some, but it is totally not the answer, particularly for people who are outside of the area.
There's also less children, right, from what it was 10 years ago. It's a serious problem, but, that line is dropping off too, maybe because you can't find childcare.
Yeah, people are planning their pregnancies around childcare. No, that is true.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the committee? Supervisor Baker?
This question isn't necessarily directed to anyone in particular, but anyone who has insight, I would be interested. So I'm assuming we didn't have this problem to the same extent 5 years ago. What changed? Or 10 years ago? What changed? What's the root cause of the problem? I mean, I think there's some just economics. If you can take care of so many children safely, and therefore, the mother is taking care of them, and or father. I don't mean to be sexist. If they go out and get a job, then they're not taking care of their own kids, so they're paying someone else. And so there's that economic ratio of what they're earning versus what the child care earning. But that's, I think, always existed. So, what has really changed in the last 5 or 10 years that caused this, if we can identify that?
On the workforce side, the workforce labor shortage has increased the amount of attractive positions open, that the low pay of childcare is not worth it. It's hard. It's a hard job. And there's no benefits. $13 an hour when I can go and work at Quick Trip for $16 to $18 an hour and get full benefits. Yeah, I'm going to totally do that. That is probably the root cause of what's happening here. And you can love what you do all you want, but if you can't make ends meet, it's also $13 an hour is below a livable wage. And from the work that I do, some of the grants that I work with, we cannot invest this money into people who are going into early childhood education because they are not going to make a livable wage afterwards. And that's one of our performance measures. So that should be a major indication that that something's wrong here. So the real question is, what do we do? So all of the investment from the state and the investment of, the work that I'm doing is, again, just a Band-Aid, and we have to rethink about the entire industry, which is where that private partner, the private-public partnership, plus an investment from the government, whether it be county or state or whatever, needs to be reevaluated. It has to happen, and there are models that are out there. There's the tiered funding model, which I've re-examined into a membership model that could be implemented per center, and it can be invested, there can be investment from all three entities that would be enough, even if two major employers invested in each 10 slots at 100% of the true cost of care, with the investment of 50% from the family. That would increase the wages or increase the amount of revenue into the provider enough to at least increase the wages. But if we can, rally enough of our employers in the area and get 3 or more for each of these, the potential of stabilization is totally there. It's just people have to buy into it, but they're not going to. It's really difficult to get people or these industries to buy into it without something supporting them in the beginning. So I have been working on this for a really long time, and I have models prepared. Well, they're not ready yet, but it is possible. It's possible. So I don't know if you want to add.
I could just add that I think COVID and the pandemic also took a struggling industry and really exacerbated the problem. So we now see, and I think Missy would attest to this, that there are less workers now than ever before, and there's actually classrooms that cannot be open because they can't find staff. And that's the first time in the last couple of years that we've actually experienced that type of crisis.
I would add to that. I totally think that is accurate. When you look at that curve that we showed, there was a drop. And if you think back to when the pandemic started, one of the things we did here, I updated the board early on. We did a survey of our staff to ask, hey, because what was happening was kids couldn't go to school, right? Your kid gets sick, your child needs to stay home. That means you need to stay home. And as that continued to happen, we had a lot more remote work. This is my analysis, so perhaps it's not worth much, but we had a lot of people who found other ways to work so that, we have a lot of remote workers that used to be available for positions that Elsa's talking about. And when you lose the workforce, we have more centers close. We have more families looking for alternative ways to provide their childcare. The pandemic was a huge hit to this problem. And like I said, we sent out that survey to our staff. We had a significant number that they responded, yeah, it was a struggle when children need to stay home. And I can remember, again, my children are a little older, 9 and 12. I think for about 3 years, they came home just covered in mucus. Kids were sick. You'd send your kid to childcare, your kids are sick. That was not the pandemic, right? When kids are sick at the pandemic, it was your kid needs to stay home for 10 days. Your child needs to stay home for 2 weeks, which is a hit to the family. It's because one of the breadwinners from that family needs to stay home. It's also a hit to childcare centers because if they can find a way to make it work, and not have the cost of childcare, they're going to do it. So that compounds it because now there's a person who revenue that was coming in that's not there, and all the expenses of childcare remain the same. They cost the same amount for rent, same amount for all the other things you're paying. When we started this work with Children's First Finance, that I looked at the business models and I'm just like, man, this is right up there with running county government. this is not a money-making endeavor. This is a tough business. And the pandemic made it worse.
Chairman Gibbs?
Sure, and I think that there's one other significant impact that was the result of the success in economics in the county and the state, because that drove, inflation drove wages up, and inflation, drove wages up every place but at childcare. And so it just became an economic model that it's not like you had mentioned. If I'm going to get $13.65 an hour, I can go to Quick Trip with literally no responsibility as far as somebody else's child and the safety and welfare of that child, and I can get $16, $18 an hour with benefits versus $13 an hour over here. It's seen all over. And so, we had a report on WCA where individual workers at warehouses were being paid $25 an hour, starting with full benefits. So, when you're working at a child care center, it's a work out of love and more or less because the economics are not there. But we need to find a way to make them more economically beneficial. I think one of the opportunities that I see, I used to be a tax practitioner, a tax preparer for 30 plus years. The tax credit that is provided to the family that is paying child care was limited initially at $3,000 of child care paid. Well, and even at the highest end, that was 30%, they would get, a $900 credit on their tax return. Well, now, in some of the larger cities, I know of two WCA staff that were paying for two children. They were paying in excess of $40,000 in Madison for child care for two children. And they're getting credit on the first $3,000. That's crazy. We need to have a serious look at that. And then the same is true at the state level as far as the credits for child care.
Thank you. Any other questions? Becky?
I realize this is a huge issue. My question is, if a major part of this is the lack of staffing for businesses, what stake do these businesses have in resolving the issue? What level of investment have they put into this?
That is another excellent question. So far, I'm just going to stay Marathon County proper, not much. Other than getting really creative with their HR practices and being flexible with families and whatnot. So it's kind of been like a pioneering moment in order to bring the idea of such a major scale investment from our private industries, and that's what we're working on. We're working on what is the investment that we need? What is the investment that we can get? That's all. We're working on it. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Supervisor Baker?
So just to help me understand the situation, because I have not studied this a lot. So from an economic standpoint, private market standpoint, basically, you would raise your prices and raise your rates, and you would then have less customers, but you'd be making money. And businesses would have to raise their wages to attract employees. And, there's basically a market solution for this. Why are we saying that market solution doesn't work? Why do we need government involvement? And then how would the county how would the county participate in this other than providing subsidies, basically? What could we do to help?
So the burden falls on the family. And that's one of the other issues, is that the cost of childcare is already too high for families to afford. So then that is leading to one of the parents staying home, which is increasing the labor shortage even more. Like, this is a circular thing. So the standard market fix doesn't work in childcare. Why we would need investment in as a subsidized thing is that this is a public good. And the burden shouldn't just be on the family. Those prices for, so like, I'm gonna kind of digress a little bit here. So how, like, an example of how a model could work, and this is what I've been working on big time. All right, so we have GreenHeck. I'm just gonna say GreenHeck. They want to have 10 guaranteed spots at Missy's childcare provider, or at this center. And one spot, the true cost of care is $1,800 a month. So they would be at $180,000 a month. Wait, hold on. 1,000 times 10, so $18,000 a month that they would have to invest for those 10 spots. Those are guaranteed slots. So say they have families that fill 8 of those slots, but they need to attract 2 new employees, one from Connecticut and one from Tennessee, that have families. Now they can say, hey, we can guarantee you and your family that a place to come, you don't have to worry about childcare, and that's part of the benefit of working here. What is that worth to a place like GreenHeck? It's worth a lot. It's worth a lot to have a talent come in. So the benefit for our private industry is there. However, this is brand new. There is no other place that we can turn to look to be like, does this work? No, we're practicing. So anything could happen. There are so many things that could come into play here, like staffing shortages, or an emergency that happens, and heaven forbid they have to close. So that's basically the where we're at.
I also think, just to add to that, I also think that sometimes you have to think about childcare in terms of comparing it to public schools, right? So public school is a form of childcare. Public schools are publicly funded, government supported, whereas now we take childcare and compare it to that, where there's very, very little support, public support for childcare programs. So it's, privately funded, self-funded. And so I think that's a big difference as well, and why I think that people are searching for government support as well.
In terms of county support, I think that's one of the things that, again, very bluntly, that the county board, that's a county board policy decision, what that support looks like. Certainly stipends are, there's an easy button of what that stipend might look like. Just adding funds is a form, certainly, of support. I think there are other things to look at, and you look at, Elsa made reference to some of the models. Antigo School District is purchasing into that tiered model. There are other school districts that are looking at this issue. To your specific point about why for some employers, the private market approach doesn't solve it, because those employers can't raise their wages for the work that they pay. Like, I'll use the county. I can't just, I'd have to go to all of you and you'd ask me a very poignant question. Well, Lance, you're asking to raise the rate for jailers to $33 starting an hour. I'm not, just put everybody at ease. But we don't have the funds to do that, but they need access to childcare. So we can't, all the other entities can't just raise the wages like the private businesses, like Quick Trip has. Like, I'm a big connoisseur of Quick Trip food. I love it. If you've gone there, you've seen the prices of things go up. The chicken that used to be $3.99 is now $4.59, or it's $5.49. And as Chair Gibbs referenced, inflation has increased a lot of things. There are a lot of employers that don't have that ability. And like Elsa said, what employers are doing, this is what the county leveraged immensely through the pandemic, flexibility in other areas, right? If you have childcare needs, there's a lot of people that work for us that, as Kelly referenced, dropping your children off at school. Let's talk about how flexible we can be in terms of moving shifts, allowing people to work remotely, hybrid models, because those are things we can do that doesn't negatively impact the productivity of staff, and a lot of times it actually is a positive impact, at relatively low cost, whereas we don't, the families then are not in a position where they need to incur additional childcare. I mean, it's not only the 8 to 5 childcare. You talk about, Kelly brought up schools, after school care can be an expensive thing. So, okay, what can we do to help you to not have to incur that additional expense? So employers are, I think that in my mind has been one of the challenges here, is that employers are looking for what's the greatest bang for their buck. And right now, the greatest bang for their buck hasn't been the on-site childcare. I'll make them my employees. There's other things they're doing to try to address it. But it's going to take a lot of little things to figure it out. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all model. Working with Gary Olson, the new executive director at North Central Healthcare, one of the things I've learned over the last several months is North Central Healthcare used to have on-site childcare. You had a nursing home and a childcare center. Apparently, that's a very common model. There's a lot of synergies there when you think about it. It makes sense. But they don't right now. But Gary Olson is telling me that they're having a lot of struggles. I think there are opportunities for the county to say, hey, do we do it as, or North Central to look at, do we form one of those partnerships to increase the overall number of childcare spots? Because what we don't want, our group spent a lot of time talking about, what we don't want to create is some form of, we don't want to incentivize essentially one childcare center robbing employees from another, because you haven't added anything. We need to find a way to increase the total number of spots available. And that's a real challenge, because as one provider pays more, you talk about, hey, if I'm a childcare provider and I get $13 an hour in one location, oh, hey, they're hiring over here for 15. I'll go work there.
That's what happened in Stratford,
Yeah.
is they closed down because of the, was it Marshfield
Yeah.
opened up? Yeah, that they lost their employees to them and had to close their doors.
So I think, an interesting thing that I've been trying to think about is, what does that partnership look like? I know benefits are a significant part of this, the availability of benefits. What options are available potentially to address that? What options are available for a collective models we've talked about? We don't have any great answers right now. A lot of ideas. We'll hopefully have more clarity after tomorrow, but great question on the private market, because that's where my mind goes as well. What's the private market solution? The other part is, when you think about this area of this work, there's a lot of regulation. It's a complex area, and the staffing ratios for certain age children are fundamentally different than other age children, and we have after-school childcare that now has taken, quite honestly, the moneymaker for childcare is the 4-year-old, right? 4-year-olds are great. They can do a lot of stuff. Eat Cheerios by themselves. Clean up. But now that 4-year-old care is available in a lot of places where it's taking that cash cow away from the childcare provider, and you're left with you'd look at a newborn. Sure, they charge more, but you can only have a couple, right? I mean, so your staffing ratios, when you finally get that group of kids that are older, now they have another avenue to go through, which the state has started to do that. That's disrupted the childcare model as well. So there's a lot of factors at play to make it difficult. The challenge is going to be what's the solution?
I think we're trying to keep people here in Marathon County, and the market-based solution says, I know what I'll do. I'll build my post office vehicles in North Carolina because they don't have those regulations and it's cheaper. Or in China, or in Brazil, or Indonesia. That's the market-based solution. If you're running a company and the only thing you care about is the profits, that's what you do. We, on the other hand, want to have happy citizens and have a good place to live.
And those investments of like ideally building on-site childcare, there are industries or companies in our area who are considering doing that. But then again, where are you going to get the staff? And is it going to be an overhead? So say Green Heck wants to build one on-site. Is that going to be Green Heck's childcare? Are they going to be the one, like employees of Green Heck proper now? Or are they going to have to find a childcare entity to go through all of the regulation process? So these are like things that, you know, have to be taken into consideration. And just a fun fact, Green Heck cannot have an on-site because they hire previous offenders, and you can't have that with a child care center. So like there are all sorts of different things that come into play. Like you can't just build new child care. And really the solution is to work with the providers that we have right now to expand to their full capacities, and then in the future think about how to build more. So that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions from the committee? I do have one. You talk about benefits. Is there any way in the future that benefits could be put in for childcare? It seems like the benefits is a part of it, most of it that's pulling it back. But I don't know.
That is a great question, and we think about it often, and we even think about it in terms of my very own office that I run, right? Like health insurance has been an issue for us as a very small organization. I think that it depends on each individual center, right? They're each independently operated. Some are under the auspices of a YMCA, some are privately owned, some are under, our nonprofit, for-profit. It really depends. And over the years, when we've looked into these subs of, group consortiums for healthcare and benefits and things, we just haven't come up with a really great solution even to, make that happen amongst like a cluster of them. So I'd love to see that happen too.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, well, thank you, Kelly, Elsie, and Melissa for coming in for public comment. It ended up being more than that, but it was a good discussion. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And on the affordable housing part of it, that is going to be coming up with Dale Knapp and Dave Eckerman. Hopefully that will give us a good presentation for our February county meeting? Okay. Okay, thank you. Moving on. Number 5, policy issue discussion and potential committee determination. None. Number 6, operational functions required by state ordinance, resolutions, or policy. None. Number 7, educational presentation and committee discussion. 7A, McDevco. This is Kim.
Hello, everybody. So you've got my update in front of you. I'll just expand on some things as we navigate. So gap financing, McDevco dispersed in the calendar year of 2022 approximately $315,000. And I just want to touch on that a little bit. So we're a gap financer. And some of you have heard me talk about that before. But what that means is that we act as a secondary in partnership with a primary bank. So we can only lend on 20% of a total project. So this $315,000 actually represents about $1.5 million in economic development in Marathon County. So just to give you some perspective of over 300,000. That's what that actually translates to when we think about Marathon County and the business growth that we're able to help start and expand. So very exciting from our standpoint. As you look below, we've got some of the programs that we held in calendar 2022. We just wrapped up the 16-week Gear Certificate of Entrepreneurial Excellence workshop. The primary goal of that workshop is to take aspiring entrepreneurs through a high-level overview of what it's going to take to start their business, or if they've started and they're a little stuck, or maybe they haven't taken that next leap, what do they need to know to have all the tools in their toolbox? So they're not going to have all the answers, but they're at least going to know where to look or where to start moving the needle. So the graduates present to our Dolphin Tank. They present their lean canvas, which translates to their business plan. And then from there, they can actively pursue funding, or they can pursue the growth or the startup of their business. So in the past, our conversion rate coming out of that course was 1 in 10 businesses, so 10% actually starting their business operations. We're now at about 3 in 10. So 30%. So we've seen some growth in that area. So it's been very exciting to continually evolve that program and just see the benefits that it has. With that, our calendar programming for 2023 will be coming up shortly. We really take a careful look at the past year and really try to fine tune what the next year is going to look like based on the feedback we've gotten, so we can continue to grow that economic development in our community. COVID grants. So McDevco does administrate COVID grants on behalf of Marathon County as well as other partners. We've administered over $600,000 total, and then $180,000 of that came from the Marathon County Micro Business Grant. So these are $5,000 grants that serve micro businesses in Marathon County outside of the city of Wausau. And we do have another batch of applications in process with Marathon County. So we're still dispersing and administering that fund because businesses are still being impacted by COVID. Could be various factors, but this grant is still available and we're still offering it. Like I said, some of the programs that we offered to aspiring entrepreneurs in 2022 are below, in 2023 coming shortly. The next page highlights upcoming and current events. So McDevco also convenes municipalities within Marathon County. We'll be having another municipality meeting coming up in February. We host them quarterly in person at our office at the Business Incubator. So that'll be coming out shortly. And then EEC. So McDevco in January of 2021 became the management services for the Entrepreneurial Center. So we were tasked with filling the Business Incubator. So the EEC board hired McDevco to fill the space and operate what I call a little ecosystem, right? So we've got a business incubator. The idea is they incubate and then they grow, and we are able to help ideally finance them in Marathon County. So when McDevco started, the occupancy rate was 61%. We closed December at 85% and held an average occupancy of 80.67% through 2022. All manufacturing is full, and we've seen more offices become appetizing to those in the community, and we've actually gotten creative with how we fill them. So feeling really good about our progress and partnership with the EEC there. And McDevco also does have a co-working space within the Entrepreneurial Center. And that space has desks. It can have tenants at 6 and 12-month leases, and we also have day drop-ins. We have seen an increase in the number of day drop-ins that we've had. So overall, just healthy growth in that area that we're very happy to report and see. But that's really all I have. Any questions for me?
Any questions for Kim? Okay, thank you, Kim. 7B, Library Monthly Report. Leah?
Is this on? Yes, it is. Hi, thank you, Chair Seefeld. You have my report in your packet. Happy to expound on any of those items, just some support updates, staffing updates, and some of the programming that we've been holding over the past month. I do have a couple of updates since this report was submitted. One kind of surprise item is we have a new website. We had always had plans to build a new website for several years, but life goes on. However, there was a security breach with GoDaddy, our host site. And so we had to bring our website down, and we just took that opportunity to rebuild our website. So if you go to mcpl.us, you will notice a very new website. We're still adding interactive items on there, but you can access your account and your the catalog and our upcoming programs, and it's being built out as we speak. So that's one turn lemon into lemonade item that happened, but I'm really pleased with it. It's got a really clean interface. The other one was really exciting and interactive, but I think it was a little bit cluttered, and sometimes for a certain number of our patrons, it was cumbersome to navigate. And so this new one is nice and clean with a simple interface and very easy to use. So we're excited about that. Another thing I am working on is we are planning to do a strategic plan, and I don't know if Corp Counsel is here. I'm waiting on him. I have a template for a strategic plan RFP that we're looking to send out in the hopes of finding someone that will meet our needs so that we can create focus groups with the community and find out what kind of direction the library should be taking that would best support our community now and hopefully in the 3 to 5 year range future, and then be able to update that as time goes on. We've never really had a strategic plan as far as I can tell from our records. We've got sort of a mission, vision, and objectives, I think, sheet that they've used for quite some time, but I'd like to develop that further just to get some real input from the public and see what they want. So that's something exciting coming up. Something less exciting is it's the winter time again, and much like last winter, we've had an increase in incidents at the library. I recently reached out to Wausau Police Chief and Deputy Police Chief to discuss it. It happens. When it gets cold, people use the library as a warming center, as they should, and in the summer they can use it as a cooling center too, but we're not a shelter, of course. And so we've had some incidents that are beyond the capability of our staff to handle, so we've had to call emergency services on several occasions so far this winter. I believe the police chief had a meeting recently, and it was to be brought up, so I'm waiting on a response from them. But I believe that they're going to start up with their walkthroughs. Having a police presence on a regular basis at the library, I think, really helped. So people who want to do bad things at the library are less inclined to, because there are police officers walking through. And obviously, our top priority is always to make the library a safe and welcoming place. And sometimes some of those incidents, they are scary, and they're scary not only to patrons but also to our staff, and so we're looking on ways to mitigate that. And just a last thing, there was a lot of conversation about the child care issues in the community, and obviously we're a library, but I always think about what can the library do to help this, and I was thinking maybe we could have a child care career fair of some sort to try to get new staffing for that. I mean, we really have so many different people that come into the library. We have 9 locations all throughout the county, so even in our rural areas, which need childcare staff as well, as you just heard from the Stratford location closing because of staffing issues, maybe that would help. Another idea I had, and I was just caught the child caring woman on the way out, and I think they've done it in the past, but maybe have a seminar at the library about regulation. So those quote unquote illegal child care places could learn about how to become regulated or approved childcare, so they could continue to do what they're doing, but only on a regulated basis, have all of those safety measures in place. So that was an idea that I had that in the course of this meeting, so it was valuable. I gave her my card, and hopefully we'll meet up to have some. We have a lot of space. We've got a great community room that we could have signage up if there's going to be some kind of child care career fair or have a child care regulation seminar of some sort. So I thought that was maybe a good idea. We'll see. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have the UW Extension report. Jason?
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Pleasure to be here with you this evening. I'll go through our report, but you have it in your packet. I'll go through a couple of highlights, and then I actually want to hand the mic over to the new area director, Jeremy Solon, who is here this evening. So he'll get a chance to introduce himself. You get to know him and work with him in the future. So in your packet, you have our monthly report. A couple of things that I want to highlight to make note of actually is the fall 4-H recap that's in there, and it kind of, because of our December meeting being postponed, they kind of rolled it up into one comprehensive report. But I want to alert you, if you're up early, 6:45 I think is the time tomorrow morning, Channel 7, Jasmine Carbajal will be on along with Kate Laux about the 4-H foodie program. Actually, that is actually at the public library, so partnering with the library on some programming. And so that if you're up, Channel 7 will be airing that. There'll be a segment on that. So again, 4-H programming taking off in the fall and continuing into the spring. Again, it's always year round, but we have some pretty innovative programs that are happening now in partnership with other entities. In the ag arena, I want to just draw your attention to the Midwest Manure Summit for 2023. Believe it or not, when you have a robust dairy industry like Marathon County has in central Wisconsin, you got to do something with it, right? In a productive way. So if you read that bullet, it talks about the summit is a biannual summit. It actually will be at Lambeau Field this year. It's a statewide effort that Heather is helping to lead, kind of again with her dairy emphasis in Marathon County. But to do it in it's profitable for whoever is handling the manure, but doing it in an environmental and sustainable way that doesn't impact the natural resources that we have is the focus of that. So she's one of the co-chairs of leading that committee, and I think it's important that she continues that work because it impacts the farmers here in Marathon County. So just a quick highlight there. And then lastly, under the Hort Educator, Janelle put in there something, a slide, or kind of a recap of her presentation at our shared conference in December about the impacts of natural resources and human health and well-being. And so her emphasis is on horticulture, and horticulture therapy is a huge part of that. So gaining grounds garden and working with incarcerated populations on the well-being that comes from getting your hands dirty, working in the horticulture arena. There's a lot of research that's on there, and just so she's taken the opportunity to present to other folks, to connect those resources of what it means to be in the hort field on well-being of an individual, which we talk about mental health being a consistent underlying issue across central Wisconsin and across the state and across the country. So she's working in those spaces, not just from what does it mean to diagnose a plant disease, or what is this bug that comes in from my garden, but looking at it from a humanistic side of things. Because when we know that if you're involved in the outdoors, outdoor recreation being an example, but we're involved in gardening and being outside, you have a better health outcomes. And actually, it's not in this report, but you've seen in previous ones where she's been partnering with Veterans Office, with Green Team, and getting veterans that are experiencing PTSD in the garden and the impacts it has on their health and well-being. So just a couple of highlights from the report. Again, if you have any questions on that, please let me know. But then I'll actually pass the baton and introduce Jeremy Solon, the new area director here for Marathon County in Area 7, and you can do a quick introduction.
Excellent. Thank you. Good to see you all. I'm excited to be in the position. So I'm in day 3, I think. I have a lot to learn. Fortunately, I have Jason to bring me up to speed, and we'll continue to work with him as he's in his new role. But I've been in Extension for close to 10 years in a variety of different roles, working statewide, nationally, and then before that was at UW-Stevens Point. So I'm excited to be in this role and support Extension in Marathon County and in the area. So look forward to working with you.
Okay, thank you. I would like to talk to you after we get done. No, I'm not going to chew you out right away, Moving on to the UW Stevens Point report. Mrs. Toms. Mrs. Toms, how do you pronounce your first name?
Ozella.
Ozella. Okay, thank you.
Well, good, evening. Everybody is getting dark, so. So you have my report as well. I'll just kind of highlight a couple of things. One is our enrollment, our applications and admits still continue to be up from this time last year. So that's promising. We hoping that that's going to be a great sign for our 10th day in the fall. That's when I could tell y'all our number of enrollment next fall, but really excited that the numbers will continue to be increased from previous fall. Also, I'm working with our advisors on a finish-up campaign. So I got a list from the registrar's office of a lot of students, but we're focusing on students who've completed at least 45 credits. You need about 60 credits to get your associate's degree. So really focus on those who've gotten at least 45 credits but are not currently enrolled. I did kind of go to, if I saw somebody with 42 credits, I kind of, captured them as well. So we're going to make intentional contacts with these students saying, hey, you need 15 credits to get your associate's degree. We can get you in this class, in the spring, this class in the fall, really see if we can make that, that targeted contact with students who are not currently enrolled. So that's something we're really working towards to get students back in school. A lot of these students left during COVID and just didn't come back. So, our students come back to campus on the 23rd of this month, so excited about that. It's really like quiet around the campus right now. It's really eerie, so looking forward to having students back. Number 5 here, I have our Hank Talks. I know a lot of the community members really love these Hank Talks, and so we have the dates. We haven't secured all the speakers yet, but these are the dates for our Hank Talks. And then number 6 are just some different events that are coming up. I know WIPs have some events, so I have those listed. Also, Good Ideals with our continuing ed starts next week, but people are still able to register. So if anyone's interested in Good Ideals, please register for that. On January the 6th, we will have a MLK event on the campus. So it'll be more information out about that. We'll actually have a meeting tonight at 6 with that group to get a little bit more information about who's all going to be included in the lineup. But we're really excited about that event, so please consider joining us for that on the 16th. Also, for the month of February, Black History Month, we will have Black History events throughout the month of February. So you have those listed here on the second page. So we're hoping that the community come out and really support those events as we celebrate the history of our African American folks. And see anything else here. Oh, Mosaic. So Mosaic's Connecting Communities Conference would be February 24th, also on the Wausau campus. And they have wrestled me to do a keynote. So come support me, please. And so that's pretty much it. Any questions?
Any questions? Supervisor Rosenberg?
Yeah, what does the campus do to gin up enrollment? I mean, what outreach is there to gain students, I guess?
Yeah, so like I said, as mentioned, one thing we're doing is working on a finish-up campaign where we actually seek out students who are not enrolled. Students who are really close to finishing their degree. That's one thing we're doing. I've also been working to get more concurrent classes taught, and so these concurrent are like dual enrollment, where high school teachers teach the students. That way, having some type of pipeline, so students are already been exposed to a curriculum and they already have credits for our campus. And it's like, okay, you already have three classes. Come on and bring those in and attend Stevens Point. Also, just going out to high schools, attending college fairs, things of that nature. So, but we need to do more. So, yeah.
Do those students that do dual enrollment, do you see them showing up at campus or?
I don't know that's a good question. I don't have the data on that. That's one thing sometimes I've been trying to get my hands on. So I don't have the data on that. But we do have a number of students who've taken, 2 English courses already. They've taken a math course. They've taken speech, the speech course is required. So, but the thing is, those classes come into our institution or any UW school. So sometimes those students do it and they go to Madison, which is great because we're still providing that service. So we don't always get those students, but we're able to provide a service to the students, right, in our community. So.
Well, I would think that those students typically that are taking those classes in high school have a plethora of opportunities. They're probably the top of the class, so they're probably
that's true.
Not looking so much locally and looking farther afield.
Sometimes we have some students take calculus. I mean, so we have, right now we have one of our new faculty teaching a calculus course, and we have I think maybe 10 students, high school students, enrolled in that course, which is amazing. So yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, number 8, next meeting date, time, location, announcements, and future agenda items. Excuse me. 8A, committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. Mr. Baker.
Thank you. So I want to give an update on the 2 that requests that I made last month, and then I have one new one. So I had requested that we have a discussion of a potential new rule, which would have to do with putting things on the agenda, and would be 3 supervisors be allowed to do that. And that was determined to not be appropriate for our committee. And Chair Gibbs said so then after Chair Seefeld had informed me that I put in a formal 3B rule 3B request to Chair Gibbs. And so that is going to go on the executive committee, and that should be on the agenda in February for the executive committee. The executive committee agenda this month is full with the strategic plan. So that will, if you're interested, that should be on the executive committee in February. And then the other item that I asked was educational presentation on Zecchino versus Dane County. And that Corp Counsel Prunier had, or Seefeld, I'm not sure who decided that, but decided that that should be, if it's done, that should be done at the full board, so that he only has to do that one time. And I had said that, that was fine with me in the meeting. So from my standpoint, I've requested that legal guidance, and it's not, that I'm trying to stay legal, and so then it's the Corporation Counsel's responsibility to provide that. If they don't do that, that's not on me. So then also the board members know that I sent out an email yesterday requesting an agenda item, but I want to read that so that is public information. So I'm requesting that the following 2 items be added to the February 2nd EED agenda, concurrent with our committee responsibilities as follows. Reporting relationship, the committee shall have the primary responsibility of conferring with and acting as liaison for the following county departments: Marathon County Public Library Board. The first requested agenda item falls under Rule 15B4 of our rules, educational presentations. Presentation by 3 Marathon County Library Board appointees regarding their background, qualifications, and interest, with opportunity for questions by our committee and other county board members. Second requested agenda item falls under Rule 15B6, discussion and potential committee determination of recommendations to be directed to the county board for its consideration with Marathon County Library Board appointments. And if the agenda requests are approved, the vote by the full county board would obviously need to be delayed until February following the EED meeting on the 2nd of February. And I'm not recommending that all appointments go through review by a standing committee, but I do believe that it would be appropriate upon supervisor request where there's a high level of board and our constituent interest and engagement. And that practice is consistent with common practice for confirmation of appointments at both the state and federal level. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next meeting, Thursday, February 2nd at 3 p.m. Number 9. Mr. Rosenberg, second. Supervisor Baker, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
You don't have to vote.
Thank you.